You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles, and I'm Frank because I have to be. In studio today we have Mr. David J., who's come in to talk about asexuality. Welcome back to studio, David.
Thanks.
All right, let's ask the one question that by now everybody is dying to know, dying to hear. What is asexuality?
An asexual person is someone who does not experience sexual attraction. So the way that most people, either if they're walking down the street and they see someone, or if they're in a relationship with someone, at some point feel compelled to include sexuality in the way that they relate with people. Asexual people don't feel that compulsion.
Now, is this something that's hereditary? Will asexual parents normally give birth to asexual children?
We really don't know. The level of scientific research on asexuality is really minimal right now. It's just beginning. This community has kind of just appeared over the past 2 or 3 years, and research on the topic of asexuality has started around that time. And so there's a very preliminary estimate right now that about 1% of the population might be asexual. But for any hard scientific data about asexuality, the only answer is more research has to be done. And we at asexuality.org, are really encouraging that and trying to help scientists to get as much good, open research done as possible.
Can an asexual feel romantic feelings at all?
Yes. And asexual people feel all the same emotions as sexual people do. And we have the same kind of range of emotional intensity. It's more complicated for asexual people to label what a romantic relationship is. And there's a lot of discussion in the community about how to think about our relationships, because it's not as simple to break them down to romantic relationships in one category. You know, romantic relationships that involve sexuality and friendships that don't involve sexuality. But many asexual people use the word romantic and say that they're in love with someone and talk about experiencing romantic feelings. And there are asexual people in the community who are getting married, who are finding other ways that they can commit to people long term.
That brings me to my next question. Does asexuality mean a lack of feeling love?
No. Sex and love are different things, bottom line. And in many cases, I think we're forced to think about love differently because in our society, sex and sexuality and love are kind of very integrated concepts, but we still experience it. We still experience it just as much and just as strongly as anyone else.
What pleasures can an asexual person experience?
Well, I don't think you really want me to start listing. I could go on forever.
Okay, can you tell me then what pleasures then an asexual person cannot experience?
Cannot experience. I think that we're not interested in sex. So, to me, anything genital pleasure with a partner is not something that I've ever experienced as pleasurable. Some asexual people masturbate, and many don't. Some experience arousal, and many don't. But the important thing to understand is that it's not that we have less pleasure in our life. It's that the places that we get that pleasure are different. You know, for every sex is something that takes a lot of time and energy for sexual people to do. And that's time and energy that we're spending on experiencing pleasure other ways. And maybe the type of pleasure that we wind up experiencing isn't as intense as sexuality, but a lot of times it is. You know, if I'm fighting really intensely for something that I believe in, that's a kind of pleasure that's really powerful for me. Or if I'm exploring a level of connecting with someone that otherwise wouldn't be able to, that's a kind of pleasure that's really intense for me. Or if I'm, making a lot of chocolate. So there are So there's the I guess short answer is that any type of pleasure you can imagine, almost. There's a lot of ways to have fun out there.
I really like the chocolate example.
Thanks.
Getting back to what you had mentioned, genital petting, feeling of arousal. Some people do, some people don't. I get the understanding here, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's for an asexual person, that type of sexual touching or sexual activity, is it really a take it or leave it sort of thing, or do they just would rather not do it at all?
I'll speak for myself personally, and I get the sense that this is where a lot of asexual people are. I personally feel indifferent towards it. But in any context where that kind of sexuality happens, it's charged with some sort of meaning. And that level of meaning makes it awkward and makes it into a negative experience. So because I know that sexuality is this important thing in the world, and because I know that if there's something I'm engaging in with a partner, there's some reason that my partner feels compelled to do it. And that reason is probably intricately intertwined with whatever relationship I have with them. And all of those things make it so it can't just be a neutral experience.
Okay.
I guess would be the answer.
Is it possible, and this is coming from my own very naive understanding of it, is it possible for an asexual man to maintain an erection because he's not sexually, he doesn't feel the desire for sex? Is it possible for an asexual woman during sex to feel wet?
If they have sex with someone. I don't know from personal experience. I've never had sex, but I know other asexual people who have, and male and female. And yes, I think it's possible, but I think it's a stretch to associate the physical symptoms associated with sexual arousal with the emotive type of sexual desire that a lot of sexual people feel. So I am an asexual person who can experience sexual arousal. And the physiological things that happen to my body when I experience sexual arousal aren't linked to the kind of desire to engage in sexual activity that I'm told they're linked to in sexual people.
Okay.
It's a different. I mean, it's more like I'm observing something happening to my body, and kind of, it's generally not something that I care that much about.
Okay.
But it doesn't have a big impact on what I want to do with my day.